Lydia Harper had always felt the quiet weight of her days pressing down on her. Her husband, Ethan, was busy with work most of the time, leaving her alone in their modest home. The walls, though tastefully decorated, felt emptier on days when the hum of conversation was absent. She often wandered the streets near her neighborhood, not just out of necessity but because the small strolls offered her a sense of life beyond her four walls. It was during one of these walks, on the corner of her street, that she first noticed him, a man with a vegetable cart, neatly arranged with fresh greens, tomatoes, and vibrant peppers. That he had a presence that was hard to ignore. His skin glowed warmly in the sunlight, and there was a calmness in the way he arranged his produce. Lydia approached casually, pretending it was just a normal purchase. "Good morning," she said, smiling politely. "Morning, ma'am," he replied, his voice deep but gentle, with a hint of an accent that intrigued her. His name was Marcus Osei, and there was something in the way he smiled that made her pause. She picked up a few vegetables, inspecting them as she asked questions about their freshness and origin. Each answer from Marcus was patient, his laughter light when she made a small joke about her cooking skills. Lydia found herself lingering longer than necessary. She realized she was not just buying vegetables, she was enjoying the interaction. When the transaction ended, she hesitated. On impulse, she asked for his number. "In case I need some more of this, expert advice," she said with a playful smile. Marcus chuckled, writing his number on a small slip of paper and handing it to her. She tucked it carefully into her purse, feeling a flutter she hadn't experienced in a long time. That night, Lydia thought about the encounter repeatedly. There was something comforting in the way he listened and responded. It wasn't romantic in the obvious sense, but there was a connection, subtle and electrifying. She scolded herself for thinking too much about a man she barely knew, yet she couldn't help it. When she looked at her phone, she found herself hesitating over his number. Finally, curiosity won. She pressed the call button. "Hello?" Marcus's voice came through, warm and steady. "Hi, it's Lydia, from the market," she said, her voice slightly uncertain but tinged with excitement. "I was wondering, could you deliver some vegetables to my house tomorrow?" There was a pause, and then a laugh. "Of course, ma'am. I can do that." Lydia felt a thrill she couldn't explain. She spent the rest of the evening preparing her kitchen, imagining the small visit that seemed so ordinary yet held a peculiar promise. When the next day came, she waited by the door, tidying up the countertops and arranging a small tray with tea and biscuits, feeling an odd mixture of anticipation and guilt. A knock at the door made her heart jump. She opened it to find Marcus standing there, smiling politely, holding a basket filled with fresh vegetables. Their eyes met briefly, and for a moment, Lydia felt a connection that went beyond words. She invited him in, careful to maintain the proper decorum, but noticing the small, human details, the way he set the basket down, the slight smile he gave as she offered him tea. As they spoke about the vegetables and shared a few laughs, Lydia couldn't help but notice how different this conversation was from the ones she had with her husband in recent weeks. Marcus listened with genuine interest, asking questions not only about the produce but about her day, her little anecdotes, and her thoughts. Each word, each small gesture, felt like a balm to her loneliness. By the time Marcus left, Lydia felt a strange emptiness mixed with exhilaration. She had not crossed any boundaries, yet she knew something had shifted inside her, a curiosity, an emotional spark she hadn't realized she'd been missing. Closing the door behind him, she leaned against it, letting herself absorb the subtle thrill of human connection. She knew this was only the beginning, that the encounter, seemingly innocent, had opened a door she wasn't quite ready to close. The day after Marcus's visit, Lydia found herself replaying every moment in her mind. She remembered the way he had placed the vegetables on her counter, the subtle curl of his lips when she made a small joke, and the way he had listened, really listened, as if her words mattered. It was intoxicating in its simplicity. Even the smell of the fresh herbs lingering in her kitchen seemed to carry a new warmth, a reminder of his presence. All through the morning, Lydia's thoughts drifted to him. She tried to focus on her usual routines, checking emails, organizing the pantry, folding laundry, but her mind kept returning to Marcus, to the gentle weight of his gaze, to the easy way he had entered her home and filled it with quiet attention. It was a strange feeling, a mixture of excitement and guilt that she couldn't quite name. She scolded herself silently, knowing that Ethan would frown if he knew how much she was thinking about another man, yet she couldn't stop. By mid-afternoon, she found herself standing in front of her phone. Marcus's number was there, waiting. Her fingers hovered above the screen, and after a moment's hesitation, she dialed. His voice, warm and welcoming as ever, greeted her on the other end. "Hello, Lydia," he said. There was a slight pause, a sense of curiosity in his tone. "Did you need more vegetables?" "Yes," she admitted, a small smile playing on her lips though he couldn't see it. "Actually, I was wondering if you could come by again today. I have some things I need, Anne. I enjoyed our talk yesterday." Marcus chuckled lightly, a sound that sent a strange thrill down her spine. "Of course, ma'am. I'll be there in about 20 minutes. Lydia spent the next few minutes tidying the kitchen again, moving a vase slightly to the left, wiping down the counter, arranging a small plate of cookies. She felt a strange energy, a flutter of anticipation that she hadn't felt in years. When the knock finally came, she nearly jumped. Marcus stood there with his usual calm demeanor, basket in hand, yet this time something had shifted. There was a softness in his expression, a warmth that lingered just a moment longer than necessary. She invited him in, and they began discussing the vegetables, but soon the conversation wandered, touching on small personal anecdotes, childhood memories, and favorite dishes. Lydia found herself laughing more freely than she had in months, enjoying not just the interaction, but the way he made her feel noticed and appreciated. As Marcus moved around the kitchen, arranging the vegetables neatly, she noticed little things she hadn't before: the way he wrinkled his brow in concentration, the quiet attentiveness in his gestures, the casual grace in the way he stood. She realized that it wasn't attraction in the conventional sense that stirred her, but something subtler: connection, understanding, and the simple joy of being seen. Her phone buzzed briefly on the counter, a message from Ethan reminding her he would be home late. She ignored it for a moment, feeling a twinge of guilt but also a curious liberation. Here was someone who saw her differently, who listened without the distractions that seemed to dominate her married life. The thought made her heart pound, an emotional tension building quietly beneath the surface. Marcus paused, holding up a small bundle of fresh herbs. "I think you'll like these," he said, his voice gentle, almost conspiratorial. Lydia took them, their fingers brushing briefly, and felt a spark that made her cheeks warm. She laughed lightly, trying to disguise the flutter in her chest. The time passed quickly. Conversation flowed naturally, laughter punctuating the small moments. When Marcus finally left, Lydia felt an emptiness again, a longing that surprised her. She closed the door, leaning against it, and allowed herself to breathe deeply, acknowledging the strange new emotions stirring within her. She knew she was walking a delicate line, yet she also knew that this connection, even fleeting, was awakening something she had forgotten existed within her. Later that evening, as she sat alone in the quiet of her home, Lydia reflected on the day. The excitement of Marcus's visit lingered like the aroma of fresh vegetables in her kitchen. She thought about her marriage, about Ethan's long hours and distant attentiveness, and realized that what she was feeling wasn't about desire alone. It was about connection, about being seen, about the quiet acknowledgement of her presence. It was thrilling and dangerous, but in its own subtle way, it was transformative. The night stretched on, and Lydia lay in bed, eyes open, mind alive with thoughts of Marcus. She wondered what would happen tomorrow, what other small moments could bring that sense of life and warmth. She didn't know where this path would lead, but for the first time in months, she felt truly awake, aware of the intricate pull of human connection, and painfully aware of the choices she would have to make in the days ahead. The following days were heavier than before. It was as if every corner of the house carried a memory of what almost happened. Every silence between words was thick with unspoken truths. I tried to go about my life as if nothing had changed, but the truth was, everything had. Ethan's presence haunted me even when he wasn't around. The way his eyes had lingered, the way his hand had rested on mine, the way my body had betrayed me with its yearning, it all lingered in my thoughts like an echo I couldn't silence. Michael's behavior, too, began to shift. There was a sharpness in his gaze whenever Ethan was mentioned, a subtle but undeniable awareness that something was not quite right. He teased less and watched more, his smiles feeling heavier, edged with suspicion. I found myself avoiding his eyes, afraid that he would see too much. Afraid he already had. One evening, when Ethan had not been around for a few days, Michael found me in the kitchen. I was drying dishes, lost in thought, when he leaned against the counter, his arms folded across his chest. "You've been quiet lately," he said casually, but his tone carried a weight that made me uneasy. I offered him a faint smile, brushing off his comment, but he didn't move. "Emily," he said after a pause, his voice lower now. "I've seen the way you look at him." My heart stopped. The plate in my hand slipped slightly, and I had to grip it tightly to keep from dropping it. I forced a laugh, tried to dismiss it, but Michael's eyes didn't waver. He took a step closer, his presence filling the small space between us. "Don't bother denying it. You don't look at me that way." "Not usually." His words struck something I wasn't prepared for. The air seemed to thicken, and before I could respond, he reached out and gently touched my arm. His hand was warm, steady, and though I should have pulled away, I froze. "Daniel's not here," he whispered, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "And I can't pretend anymore." I backed away, searching for words, my chest tight with panic and confusion. "Michael, this isn't right," I managed to say. But my voice lacked conviction. My own heart betrayed me again, fluttering with a mix of fear and something I couldn't name. Michael stepped closer, his eyes fixed on mine. "Maybe not," he admitted. "But it's real. And you feel it too." His hand brushed against mine, lingering in the same way Ethan's had. My breath caught. For a moment, it felt as though I was standing on the edge of a cliff, the ground shifting beneath me, temptation pulling me down. I closed my eyes, wishing the moment away, but instead, it deepened. His hand slid into mine fully, fingers interlocking, and I felt the rush of heat in my chest, the dangerous comfort of being wanted. For a second that stretched like eternity, I let it happen. I let the silence wrap around us, let his closeness fill the empty space inside me, but guilt hit me like a wave, pulling me back. I pulled my hand away abruptly, turning from him, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't do this." My shoulders trembled, the weight of everything pressing down. Michael didn't push further. He stood still behind me, silent, but I could feel his eyes on my back. The room felt suffocating, and I wanted nothing more than to escape. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was torn in pieces, Ethan's gentle honesty, Michael's bold confession, Daniel's trusting voice in my memory. I was caught between loyalty and desire, between what I knew was right and what my heart had already begun to crave. The loneliness I once thought was unbearable had now been replaced by something far more dangerous, a web of temptation that threatened to consume me. The next day, Ethan came again. He arrived while Michael was out, and the moment I opened the door to see him standing there, my resolve cracked. His eyes softened when they met mine, and without a word, he stepped inside. The silence was heavy, but this time there was no pretense, no shield of casual conversation. We both knew what was lingering between us. We sat across from each other, the distance between us filled with tension. I tried to look away, but his gaze held me captive. "You've been on my mind," he admitted softly. His voice carried no hesitation, no disguise. My heart raced, the truth in his words striking me with both fear and longing. That I wanted to tell him to stop, to walk away before it was too late. But instead, I found myself leaning closer, my voice barely audible. "You shouldn't say that." Yet even as the words left my lips, my body betrayed me, inching toward him, drawn by a gravity I couldn't resist. When his hand found mine again, this time I didn't pull away. I let the warmth sink in, let the moment swallow me whole. The world outside didn't exist, there was only his touch, the thundering of my heart, the unspoken confession between us. We didn't need words. Everything was there in the silence, in the closeness, in the quiet surrender of two people who had crossed too many lines already, but just as quickly as it began, it shattered. The sound of the front door opening, Michael's voice calling my name, sent us both reeling back. Ethan rose abruptly, his eyes filled with regret and urgency. "I'll go," he whispered, and before I could stop him, he was gone, slipping out the back door as Michael's footsteps echoed closer. I stood frozen in the living room, my breath uneven, my hands trembling. Michael entered, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the room. He said nothing, but his silence was louder than any accusation. I knew he suspected. Maybe he had even heard enough. That night, the guilt consumed me entirely. I felt trapped in a nightmare of my own making, caught between two men I should never have allowed into my heart. Daniel's call came unexpectedly, his voice filled with warmth and excitement. "Emily," he said, "I have good news. I'll be coming home soon." My throat closed, and I could barely respond. The joy in his words clashed violently with the storm inside me. He was coming back, the man I had promised myself to, the man who trusted me beyond measure. Yet all I could think of was how I had betrayed that trust, even if only in moments, even if only in emotions I had never meant to feel. As the call ended, I stared into the darkness of my room, tears blurring my vision. My heart raced with fear, shame, and confusion. Soon Daniel would return, and I would have to face the truth, about Ethan, about Michael, about myself. I pressed a hand against my chest, whispering into the silence, "What have I done?" But there was no answer. Only the echo of my own voice and the weight of choices I could never undo, and so the story remained unfinished, a fragile secret waiting to shatter, a storm that had only just begun.